Fine.
How's it going, everybody? Anime Expo Lite 2020. We're here, Yen Press. Yen Press presents So I'm a Spider, So What? Panel where we're going to go through this series, which is really a rising star in the world of light novels right now. Like, we at Yen Press have published probably some of the most iconic light novels of the past few years. Sword Art Online, ReZero, Overlord, and So I'm a Spider, So What is rapidly gaining that popularity. And with an anime coming up, I think the next few years are going to be pretty big years for this property, and it's one that we love right now. So naturally, we wanted to talk about it with you all. And you know what? We're doing it live here at Anime Expo Lite. This is not a pre-recorded panel, everybody. We're doing this live. So without further ado, let's get started with the panel by first introducing the panelists. So I'm Mark Vera. I'm the Yen Press marketing guy. If you all have chatted with the Yen Press on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you've probably chatted with me. And my skills sets include tweeting, level 5 tweeting, hair length, level 100 during quarantine. I've done a very good job of developing that skill. And in this past weekend, I'd say that my panel hosting has leveled up quite a bit to level 7. So that's who I am. And also want to mention, over here we have our spider sonas on our introduction slide. So big thanks to Jenny, who you'll meet in a few minutes, for putting together our spider sonas. I think you really captured that level 100 hair length, Jenny.
Yeah, I tried.
You succeeded. Next up, I'd like to introduce the editor of the So I'm a Spider, So What light novels, Ivan. So
Hello.
Ivan, please introduce yourself.
My name is Ivan, and I work on in the editorial department at Yen Press. My skills include knowing very obscure history facts, which surprisingly comes in handy more often than you'd think in editing light novels. I'm a very, very poor but intense rules lawyer for games, which also helps in Spider. And I spend most of my time obsessing about word choice, usually because of work.
So Ivan, why don't you take a brief moment to let everybody know what an editor does, or what it means to be an editor of light novels for Yen Press, and specifically for So I'm a Spider, So What?
Sure. Yeah. We don't get a big chance to talk about this very often, so this is a cool chance to talk about it. So editorial involves getting a manuscript from translators like Jenny, who we'll be meeting very soon. And then, the first thing that we look at is always we compare it to the original Japanese. We look at it for things like, tenses, perspective, we figure out styles, and then we kind of harmonize everything with the story and try to deliver the best product we can to the English reading audience while preserving the author's intent.
Nice. And how long have you been doing that for?
I'm really bad at keeping time. I think this is my 4th or 5th year doing this. It feels like I started very recently, but it's definitely not.
All right, well, thank you, Ivan. Next up, let's introduce Jenny, the translator of So I'm a Spider, So What?
Hello, I'm Jenny Mckeon. I'm the translator for Spider, both the light novel and the manga. I translate a couple other Yen series as well, but we're here to talk about Spider. And I picked my skills, obviously translation, level 7, feel like I'm doing okay. Book hoarding, level 9. And cat photography, level 99. I'm staying with family and they've got kittens, so I'm probably going to hit 100 by the end of the weekend.
So Jenny, the assumption of you as a translator is you naturally translate the book from Japanese to English, but we know, Ivan and I know that there's more to it than that. So would you mind telling the audience, perhaps more of what a translator does that they may not be aware of?
Yeah, I work with Ivan to figure out like terms and that sort of thing. Figure out like character voices and tense and point of view characters and things like that. There's almost more like creative writing involved in translation than there is Japanese knowledge, or at least like there's an equal amount. So
Yes,
really
definitely.
channeling my inner like fan fiction writer from high school when I work on series like these, I think.
Awesome. Well, we're going to get more into talking about what you two do, in your own lanes and what you do specifically for So I'm a Spider, So What a bit later. But first, just want to talk about the series a bit. And before I get into that, talking about the series in general, and then So I'm a Spider, So What, we're going to let you know what it's about, what's so great about it, or at least what we see as what's great about it. Then we're going to go deeper into the storyline of So I'm a Spider, So What, and a discussion with that. And at that point, we're going to hit some spoiler territory. So we'll let you all know at the point in which we are going to discuss aspects of So I'm a Spider, So What that might reveal spoilers. So if you don't want to get this series spoiled, which you shouldn't, because it's amazing and its twists and turns are a big part of what make it so great, then might be a good time to leave the panel. But for those of you who are big fans, stick around because it's going to be a fun discussion, especially when we get to the point where we answer some of the questions that you asked on social media. Questions you asked that have been answered by Baba Sensei, the author, and Kiryuu Sensei, the illustrator. So, what is So I'm a Spider, So What? Jenny, would you mind giving us a brief plot synopsis of what this light novel series is about?
Sure. So I'm a Spider is about a nameless girl. She's unofficially nicknamed Kumiko. She gets named later on, but much later on. She's reborn from a modern Japanese schoolgirl into a sort of fantasy RPG style world. But instead of being born as a super overpowered hero, she's a really wimpy spider monster. So she has to sort of fight her way up in the dungeon, leveling up and evolving, while also trying to figure out more about the world and how she wound up there, and maybe, a lot of deeper and darker secrets as it goes on.
Yeah. And of course, along with that, we get to see what happened to her classmates who were in the room when this event that put Kumiko into this fantasy world. Like what happened to them? Because a lot of them have been reincarnated as different beings in the world of So I'm a Spider, So What also. So Ivan, would you a bit of the background of Baba Sensei, or some of the background of So I'm a Spider, So What? Would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yes. So Baba Sensei was originally started getting writing in early 2015 on the very popular site Shousetsuka ni Naro, roughly translated like "Let's Be Novelists." Many light novels get their start there. And Baba Sensei didn't just write Spider, but Spider is obviously one of the really big ones. Like what I was surprised to find out when researching was that Baba Sensei actually wrote another isekai story about basically they try to summon a hero and instead they summon a bunch of like Yankees, like school thugs, and crazy antics ensue naturally. But by the end of 2015, that was when the first novel for Spider was released in Japan, and 2 years later was the first time that we published the first volume of Spider in English, and that's how we got to where we are today.
Nice. I so I'm a Spider, So What's my favorite light novel series, and I love Yankee stories. So knowing that Bob Sensei has made literally my favorite light novel series and an isekai about Yankees, Bob Sensei is one of the best authors out there.
Wouldn't disagree.
Especially all of their Q&A questions.
Oh yeah, we find out how much of a genius Baba Sensei is when we get into that Q&A. So, well, what do you think makes So I'm a Spider, So What so great? What do you love about it? Jenny, why don't we start with you?
I mean, the protagonist is really like the first thing that grabbed me about the series, and you'll probably hear me gush about her as the panel goes on. She's hilarious. She's weird. She was like a shut-in and a nerd when she was a human. So now she's just like sort of rambling, like she's writing in her diary almost, and she has almost like borderline evil tendencies at times. That's kind of what makes her such a fun protagonist. But also, like, the entire plot is a lot bigger than it seems like at first glance. And it has a lot of really cool twists and some like red herrings, and it's just like a really fun ride.
How about you, Ivan? What do you find what do you love about So I'm a Spider, So What?
I would have to say I would agree a lot with what Jenny says, but if we went beyond that, I would definitely say like it's just like the kind of unique comedy and like the interesting chemistry that all the different characters have. Like a lot of isekai stories are really heavily focused on the main character. Like it's very often either like kind of a self-insert or like this kind of like abstracted power fantasy, but in
No.
Spider, like the characters like really have this life of their own that really comes across, and it just really helps carry the story for me.
For me, I have to say I'm very impressed with the world building of So I'm a Spider, So What. You know, a lot of these JRPG inspired isekai will of course play with a battle system and skills and whatnot, but it's very interesting to see how they incorporate that further into the story and even make it, you know, when we get to the spoiler pile, I'll address this more, but it even adds to the emotion, some of the most emotional parts of the series. But additionally, I have to say I really like the political intrigue and sort of the moral ambiguity with a lot of the characters, especially as you get further onto the series. And to tie that into, you know, what we brought up with the twists and turns, the biggest twist and turn for me was that I felt this way about this series. You know, I knew of So I'm a Spider, So What before I came and read the light novel. I mostly knew it about, you know, hey, it's this quirky isekai where this girl's reincarnated as a spider monster. So I expected to have fun, but you know, I didn't expect to come into it to see one of the most epic fantasy stories that I've ever read. And then, you know, at that point I keep going on and the twists just keep getting crazier. So I love how unexpected So I'm a Spider, So What is. That's a big part of why I'm so passionate about it, and why, for those of you who haven't read it, you really need to get into this. It'll be unfortunate if you find out about a lot of these twists and turns through spoilers and Twitter and whatnot. So we have 6 months until that anime comes out. Do your homework and read the So I'm a Spider, So What light novel.
Get ahead of the curve, yeah.
It's worth it.
So, you know, we talked a bit about what we think is great about it. You know, to go even further with that, you know, for those who haven't read it, what stories would you say So I'm a Spider, So What reminds you of, whether it be in the world of light novels or, you know, storytelling outside of light novels? Jenny.
I think the most obvious comparison is that Taimo is reincarnated as a slime, which is obviously another story about a protagonist who gets reborn as a monster. But it's not just the monster part that's similar. It's like they're both stories with a lot of heart. The protagonists are really endearing, and you sort of get really invested in the like world and the larger cast as it goes on. As far as outside of light novels, I think that my like childhood, early teens obsession with Artemis Fowl really comes into play here. Like just the sarcastic, weird, sort of evil anti-hero who like they've got a heart of gold, but it's like really you really gotta dig for it. And that always appealed to me.
How about you, Ivan? What did So I'm a Spider, So What remind you of?
Isekai stories that feature like a non-human reincarnation, but whenever I do recommend Spider, I usually draw the like comparison to the Wheel of Time series because of how there's many different converging and diverging plot lines with lots of different characters that really do hold up like their end. And it's not just like, you know, readers don't just go, give me more of the main character.
Yeah, no, you know, I haven't read Wheel of Time, but I am a big fan of the Song of Ice and Fire books. And I have to,
Yeah.
you know, one of the things that I liked about that it sounds pretty similar to what the connection you make with Wheel of Time and So I'm a Spider, So What. I love stories with multiple point of view characters where this character's building this aspect of the world and this character's moving this plot ahead, and So I'm a Spider, So What's delivering on that very well. But additionally, the way I compare that to A Song of Ice and Fire is the political intrigue and is the complexity with the characters. So yeah, if you like Game of Thrones, So I'm a Spider, So What is really the closest that I've gotten in feeling that reading A Song of Ice and Fire for the first time. It's funny because there's a lot of people who after they caught up with the books are like, well, what do I read next? And then, almost a decade later, I read So I'm a Spider, So What? And I'm like, yes, here I am feeling that again. So let's move this panel on to talk about the localization process. So you two have worked on this series since the very start, right? Like since volume 1 of the light novel.
Yep.
Ivan, you've been the editor. Jenny, you've been the translator, correct?
Yep.
So you're definitely the authority on working on So I'm a Spider, So What. Especially you, Jenny, since you've worked on the manga as well. So tell us, what do you find fun about working on this series?
I mean, the funnest part is probably writing for the protagonist, especially. She's got such a zany voice. She's so weird and like she has a serious attitude. And I feel like when I get into the zone, I'm just kind of like channeling her onto the page and her like wackiness. It's also fun trying to find like voices for the other characters to contrast with her. But she's just like, she's the star and she's hilarious. And I just like constantly have fun when she's, screaming her head off and like cursing out frogs and whatever else she does.
How about you, Ivan? What do you find fun about this series?
Yeah, I'd have to say my answer is very similar. Well, just with all the different characters, especially when there's a lot of different characters that all get their own screen time, it's always a challenge, but really satisfying when you just kind of think about how you can differentiate their voices, make sure they stand on their own. Because when they do in Japanese, there's this really strong like drive to do the same in English and try to deliver the same kind of experience to English readers. I don't know how well I'm succeeding, but I'm definitely trying as hard as I can. And it's fun to do that.
Well, how about challenges with working on So I'm a Spider, So What? What do you find as the, some of the interesting challenges or the big challenges that you found when working?
Sort of, you develop a list of the ones that come up frequently and you close this pattern and so on. But like, still, every time you page down and you see just like a wall of content, you're just like, I gotta go have lunch. Like, I
Anyone who's read Spider or even seen the original knows that these are they are not easy to format. They're like space is an issue, fitting text into like a legible, readable way, making sure there's hierarchy of information. There's a lot of stuff that goes into making these like graphs and charts like just intuitive to read through rather than, obviously they're part of the appeal is that they're supposed to overwhelm. Like that's kind of a big part of the shock value of seeing these on the page, especially when you run into the first graph in the series that's more than a page long. It's always very memorable. But
Yeah.
a lot of work does go into making sure that these fit on both translator side and editorial side and design side. Never forget design.
Yes,
Never
I was
forget
just
this, yeah.
admiring the font, which I see we even use the title font for the slides here, and it looks awesome. I really like all of the font choices in the print.
Yes. Well, when you told me that you liked the font choice, I was so relieved because, our design team works very hard on figuring out all the font things, just formatting on page in general, just making the visual aspect of our books just as good as the content. And I spend a lot of time just thinking about like, how the book will look at the end when it's printed or,
Yeah,
digitally.
that's really cool to me. That's one thing that I don't have to worry about much. I'm just like, Times New Roman, here you go.
Yeah, it could just be like, we're gonna go Comic Sans throughout the whole book. Like
Okay.
everyone loves Comic Sans,
Mhm.
no issues.
Maybe Papyrus for the title.
Oh, perfect. That's just a classic choice.
Everyone hold on while we fix the logo.
We'll make sure the newest volume is, to everyone's standards of Comic Sans.
So one more, I talked to you too a bit about working on this series, and one thing that's come up, through those discussions is tense, past tense, present tense, trying to figure that situation out when localizing this light novel series. Can you talk about that a little bit, about what that process was like?
Yeah, so we always, like, Ivan and I will exchange emails when we're starting a new series and be like, should this be in this tense? What do you think? Because Japanese, God, it's so like fast and loose with tense. It'll shift back and forth like every other sentence, and that's fine in Japanese, but not so much in English. And I think this one was particularly tough because it's such a present narrative. It's like a stream of consciousness. And at first, I remember that we actually went with past tense at first.
Yes.
And then changed our minds.
Yes.
I'm assuming Ivan had to go through and like change the tense of the entire first volume, which, like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, like in the beginning especially, it's evolved into a much more collaborative kind of figuring out what works best in English, because it's not always about following the Japanese on a one-to-one. If it's more important that we deliver the original intent and the experience that the author intended the readers to have. And a lot of the time that means shifting things or changing things ever so slightly to deliver a more authentic experience. And tense was definitely one of those things. We just found that, present tense, first person is, just the way to go, especially for all the, Kumoko parts, obviously. Yeah.
All right. Next, moving on, we're going to talk about some of the points where we feel the story took off, favorite characters, favorite encounters. But so naturally, at this point, I have to give a bit of a spoiler warning. We won't get too heavy into spoilers. So honestly, even if you aren't caught up with the series, it's still pretty enjoyable to check out, especially as we get into the Q&A. But if you're sensitive about any spoilers, we're gonna go into that territory a little bit. So if you're not sticking around, thank you for checking out our panel. Like I said, read this series.
Read the books and then come back.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Come back. Yeah, 10 minutes. Come back to the Q&A. In the meantime, let's move forward and talk about, when did the story take off for you? So, it was, it's a pretty fun series at the start, but for me, at least, there was a point where I'm like, wow, okay, I need to get through every single volume now. So at which point did the story get that way for you? Jenny, why don't you start?
Yeah, well, I see we've got some of the covers here. Volume 2 is definitely the first part, I think, where you really start to realize that there's more going on here than just a like fun fantasy romp. That's when Kumiko finds out a bit more about the nature of the system and the fact that it's there for a reason. You hear more about those reasons really slowly, but like that's kind of it. The reveal in the manga of that part is actually really good too. It's very like, holy cow. But I think volumes like 5-ish through 7 as well, when she manages to evolve to the form she's been trying to evolve into for so long.
Yes.
You've also got volume 6 there, which I think I picked as my favorite cover. That part of the story is like one of my favorites, when they like sort of start traveling together as a reluctant like crew of those
we'll
are
just
some
gloss over that.
In a story with many turning points, I think.
Yes.
How about you, Ivan? When did the story take off for you?
The part where that it really got intense for me is when I realized that there's like a staggered timeline, and that not every single moment is happening,
Actually, yeah. that answer.
Yeah, just realizing that, like, as you go on in the story, there's more and more clues that kind of like lead you along. But once it becomes like, there's a couple of moments where it becomes crystal clear that the timeline is staggered and not story really clicked for me, because right up until then, so that was definitely
hero, or he gets the hero skill, which, for those who have read the light novels, which means his brother, who is the former hero, dies, and that's kind of, for me, where I saw what was special about So I'm a Spider, So What, because it is a lot of what's typical in isekai, but that emotional delivery there was humbling is the word that comes to mind. It was very interesting for me to see that, oh my gosh, I'm getting emotional about a character having a skill added, but everything else that it meant is what contributed to that. So it showed me how clever this light novel was. Like, it was fun, but then at that point I'm like, wow, this is actually really clever to see what Baba Sensei is doing with the isekai genre. And then immediately at volume 3, like, these twists and betrayals happen, and all of a sudden these characters are leaving where they were for most of the story and then going into this more epic adventure. So from there it just takes off one after the other. And within a few volumes we have Kumoko's transformation, and then, oh my gosh, so these two parts that we thought were the same timeline aren't at the same timeline, and it gets the stakes. Yeah, it's funny. Volume 2, I feel there's a part where it feels like Harry Potter. When you have Shun and the other reincarnations in the same school, and then they're like, oh wait, no, it's Game of Thrones actually. Volume 3. So next question. So what's your favorite? A couple of favorites here. First, who's your favorite character? Jenny, who would you say your favorite character is?
I think I made it fairly obvious already, but
I think so. But let's bring it up again anyway.
I mean, the protagonist is my favorite character, and I love her very much. Aside from her, I would say also like Ariel, the Demon Lord. She's amazing. I actually really like Dee, who's very like ominous, but also the more you get to know them is very interesting. And those characters are also kind of like interrelated in interesting ways. But aside from that, I like Gooey Gooey, whose name I'm trying to say, but like he's so awkward for someone who's like an all powerful being. He's just sort of standing there like, ooh. I also really like Katya from the Shun side of the story.
Oh yes.
Yes. Yeah, we've run through this. We didn't even. I haven't found out about Katya with you. Just speaking. Of playing with the isekai life, that's such an interesting struggle with Katya.
Yeah.
I'd have to say my favorite character is Faye. Faye is a really interesting character for me, especially because of
which makes me also think of Wrath, but
Oh, I was about to
Oh
say. I was
yeah,
about to
that's
say.
so true.
I
So
don't know who
true.
my favorite character is yet, but I will tell you I want to see more Wrath. And I haven't read Volume 9 yet. So you two know more about what happens to Wrath than I do. But Volume
Ready.
8 definitely teased a lot
Mm,
for me, where I'm like, I do want to see what this character more.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see the other favorite question. So at the end of every volume of So I'm a Spider, So What, in very JRPG like fashion, they have a
mhm.
final encounter against some big foe, whether it be a dragon or a UFO. What has been your favorite encounter so far in these volumes of So I'm a Spider, So What?
Yeah, I mean, the showdown with Araba, which you see there on volume 3, like that's
Mm,
obviously iconic. That's like what she's
yes.
been building up to this whole time. But I mean, there's a couple of those as well with like Mother, and then I think my
Yes.
personal favorite is like her fight against the Demon Lord, where they casually wipe
Mm,
out an army in the process.
yes.
Like you do. But also, yeah, the UFO. Like sometimes you just gotta take a volume to fight a literal UFO, and that's okay.
That's totally good.
Hmm.
How about you, Ivan? What's your favorite encounter?
My favorites are pretty much any fight against Potemas.
Yeah.
Like literally any showdown, even the ones that kind of don't end up fighting too much.
Hmm.
They're always good. Potemas is also my favorite character to hate in this series.
You love to hate that guy.
Love hating that guy. So,
Mhm.
pretty much every single scene that has him in it.
That's what else is great about the UFO arc, because you get
Yes.
Yeah.
bad things happen to him.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
that's a great
basically
arc.
like the UFO, and then inside the UFO, and then Potimus. So you kind of get 3 for 1 with that
Oh, you,
final encounter.
you definitely get your money's worth for that one.
That's nuts.
Which happens to be my answer. I love that UFO fight. You have the most powerful beings getting together to take on this big threat, and then this twist at the end when, of course, Potimus wasn't going to be a good guy. But this is being adapted into, and we have a new piece of art that's been released, and for the full series. Like I know when they showed the non-Kumoko parts, it looked like the anime, like any particular scene, or just ask what makes you excited for January 2021?
Roppy and a bunch of really great characters. She's going to be playing Kumiko, and I'm excited to hear that. I'm excited to like hear her constant narration. I hope she just talks nonstop all episode. But I'm also really curious to see how they're going to like adapt it with the different
Yes.
story, and
Yeah.
also how far they're trying to go in one. Well, I mean it's 2 cours, which is great, but
Yes.
yeah, I mean I'd love to see Ariel, the Demon Lord, in action.
Okina Baba and Tsukasa Kiryuu. So a lot of you fans asked questions on social media for Baba Sensei, and we sent them over and some answers from Kiryuu Sensei as chose a portion of the answers to read off here for the So I'm a Spider, So What panel. Unfortunately, it doesn't look as though we have enough time to go through everything, but follow us on social media because we're definitely going to find a way for all of you to get the full Q&A that Baba Sensei and Kiryuu Sensei graciously provided us. But without further ado, let's answer the questions that we do have here. So first question, which we got from various fans, why a spider? So who's going to be Baba Sensei right now? I might actually be Baba. You be Baba Sensei first. Let's go.
All right, let's go. All right, so Baba Sensei's answer to this was, I get this question a lot, but the truth is there isn't much of a reason. A spider just happened to appear in a dream I had the day that I started writing this story.
Next question, sort of related. So this is a 3-part question. When did you start writing it? Did you plan the story in advance? If yes, how long did it take you to get your final draft ready for the web novel? And how old were you when you started writing?
So Baba Sensei says, I first posted chapter 1 on May 27th, 2015, which is the very same day I started writing it. I planned out the general direction of the story in advance, but the truth is that I actually came up with all of those decisions on the same day when I first started writing. I was in my 20s at the time.
So earlier when we were talking about how Baba Sensei was a genius, this is what we were talking about. Well, actually, you know what? Let's address that more with this third one, because I think this third one kind of adds another fun element to Baba Sensei being a genius. Was there any particular inspiration for making this series?
And Baba Sensei's reply was, when I first encountered web novels, that was a major inspiration that had a huge effect on me. Until then, I had always had a narrow view of novels as something that could only be published in book form. So I had no idea that there was such a thing as web novels, which you can write casually and post freely. When I found web novels, I decided to try writing a novel myself.
So we don't have perspective for this, but we'd like to think that on this morning after Baba Sensei had a dream about a spider, Baba Sensei also came up with the plot of the story and then discovered web novels. And then this genius just made this wonderful series that we've talked about for the past 40 minutes.
The same day. You mentioned in another answer.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, next question. Hi, I enjoy reading this series. How much do you like spiders?
So is this me?
Yeah.
Baba Sensei said, sorry, my apologies to spider lovers all over the world, but as you may have guessed from the fact that I chose a spider for the silly reason that I just happened to dream about one the night before, the truth is I'm not particularly into spiders or anything.
So even though all of us love spiders because of the series, Baba Sensei doesn't necessarily love spiders.
Yes.
Sad face.
So addressing the world building a bit, could you give a high-level overview of how you went about designing a labyrinth? Did you start from the main character's perspective and design sections in the order she experienced them? Do you pick biomes such as lava zones and decide what monsters would fit into those zones? Or do you pick monsters first and decide the zones based on that?
And Baba Sensei's answer to this one was, I decided the areas and monsters in the Great Elro Labyrinth more or less randomly. So sometimes I decided the area first and then came up with the monsters, while other times I thought of the monsters first and made up the areas accordingly.
So yes, genius has no process. Just made
Just
it on.
rolling with whatever is best.
Let's see, next one. Oh man, I'm just reading the series now. I want to know where they get their dragon names from because they're fun.
Baba Sensei replies, I choose all of the names of both monsters and characters, not just dragons, based on whatever sounds good to me.
I have to ask, you two, as one's working on the series, translating the series, editing the series, does that answer kind of surprise you?
It explains a lot.
It makes me very relieved that because whenever you see a name and when you look up a name and you're like, okay, this is a very obvious reference to something, then you're safe, right? Because you're like, I got it. When you look up a name and nothing comes up, then there's two possibilities. Either there is no reference and it's just, it can be whatever, or there's a reference that you've missed. And if you don't find it, you will live with that decision for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's like a random, you're like, is this a German word or something?
Oh my God, yes.
German words.
So we have 5 minutes left. I think we could finish this off. So let's get through this.
All right,
so
let's do it.
Do you have any difficulties while writing? And if you did, how did you try to deal with it?
Baba Sensei's reply is, a lack of time is always a problem. Yes, it's always a battle against time and the page limit. In my case, I don't often get stuck on where to go next with the story, but I do frequently write way too much and end up going over the page limit. So when I do get stuck, my solution is sleep, get a good rest, and reset. But then I lose even more time, which is its own problem.
Next up, how involved are you in the anime and what are your current thoughts about it?
So Baba Sensei replies, I supervise the series composition and the script, among other things. It's very thrilling right now in many different ways. Whatever that means. They probably can't talk much about it yet.
Yeah. But clearly Baba Sensei is very busy right now. In the next two questions, we actually got an answer from Kiryuu Sensei also. So let's see. If Baba Sensei, or I guess, if you were reincarnated into your world, who would you be reincarnated as? And Baba Sensei says,
even if I was reborn, I don't think I could be anything more than what I already am, no matter who or what I was reborn as. I don't think that would change. And thank you very much for reading the series.
And what does Kiryuu Sensei say?
Kiryuu Sensei says, if I was reborn as a monster, I'd want to be a snail or a catfish. As a snail, I could probably explore the caverns to my heart's content without worrying too much about enemies. And I like that the catfish can swim in lava without dying. I'd like to try lava once. As for humans or demons, if there's a job that involves researching nature and monsters, I'd like to be reborn as that sort of person. It'd be fun to go around and visit places in the world of Spider that don't show up in the story. Otherwise, I'd like to become a mage and research magic under Mr. Rodent. Both the magic itself and observing Mr. Rodent seem like fun.
Next up, which of the cover illustrations is your favorite?
For Baba Sensei, his answer is, I love all the covers, but I guess I probably have the strongest emotional attachment to Volume 1.
And what does Kiryuu Sensei say?
Kiryuu Sensei says, I'm attached to every one of them, but if I had to choose,
This panel right here is the thing that in Japan there's going to be a So I'm a Spider, So What EX light novel. So a spin-off to So I'm a Spider, So What, kind of speaking to how big it's gotten. We have an anime, there's now an EX light novel series. So that's really exciting for both Baba Sensei and Kiryuu Sensei. So congratulations to the two of them. I think we have time for one more question. So a fan named Jenny Mckeon asks, I'm the translator for So I'm a Spider, So What? And it's one of the most fun series I work on. Thank you for all your hard work. Sorry for the silly question, but is there any hope of a Yuri romance developing in the future? Maybe for our dear Kumoko? Finally, thank you for all your hard work.
That sure is a question I asked. Baba Sensei kindly responded, I'm not planning on going super in-depth with that sort of depiction, but if you're asking whether it is or isn't possible, I think it probably is. For one thing, I don't think White and Ariel's relationship can be summed up as a mere friendship. That said, it's probably not exactly romantic love either. And thank you for your support. I'll work hard to make sure you still think it's fun from now on too. Which, yes.
And that's it for the Q&A for now. But like I said, there's actually more Q&A that was actually done. So please follow us on social media, because we are going to find a way to let you all get the full Q&A that Baba Sensei and Kiryuu Sensei gave us. But for the time being, thank you very much for checking out our panel. This is a series we love, so we love the fact that you all stuck around to to hear us talk about it. And so yeah, and enjoy Anime Expo Lite. Stay safe out there, and read So I'm a Spider, So What if you haven't done so already.
It's worth it.
It's worth it. Bye, everybody.